So having looked at the scope of authority, what the agent is able to do, we're now going to look at the other side of the coin, what they have to do, what the duties of the agent are. So let's get into that. So there's a number of duties that the agent has that they owe to the principal, like to follow instructions, communicate information, act personally, etc. These are critical ones that we're going to concentrate on, right? Because they're kind of around a fiduciary duty. A lot of them are, but these kinds of duties become core around business dealings. So what you've got to do is avoid conflicts of interest, which includes not receiving a secret commission. So what do we mean by these two things? So the first thing is that the agent is acting for the principal, not for themselves. So they shouldn't put themselves in a position where the interests of the principal conflict with their own personal interests. And that's the same, if you're an employee, you've got to do what's right for the employer, not what's right for you. Okay, particularly when you're acting for them in that role as an employee. So an agent, for instance, shouldn't sell their own property to the principal without telling the principal. Okay, so it means that the principal should be aware when your interests are involved. Very closely tied to that is, as an agent, you shouldn't get any money from the third party or any benefit without the principal agreeing to it and giving you permission, right? Because otherwise that third party is inducing you away from the principal's interests. So you shouldn't receive secret commissions. Again, these are fairly stock standard kinds of things that we would expect when you're actually acting for someone else. Avoid that conflict of interest. Don't receive secret commissions. So while the agent has a number of duties, they also have a number of entitlements. So the first entitlement they have is to be remunerated, to get paid. Generally, that will be part of the agency agreement. Like when you're an agent as an employee, there's a salary or a wage agreement, right? It might be under legislation or whatever, but you're entitled to remuneration for the role that you play. The second thing you're entitled to is indemnity. So what does that mean? That means that even though you're entering a contract with the third party, you're indemnified by the principal. So again, the agent is entitled to remuneration, no matter what form that is, if it's a fee, a commission, or a formula, but the agent is entitled to be paid for what they do. The second thing, though, is this important indemnity. What does that mean? It means you'll be reimbursed for the payments you make, expenses, but also, really importantly, the liabilities you assume when carrying out the principal's instructions. Again, that's why scope of authority is important from the agent's perspective as well. Because if you're actually carrying out your role within the principal's instructions, they are the ones who will be liable for what happens, not you. Now, when can the agent actually be liable? Okay, so normally they're not, because the agent is an intermediary as a general rule. However, they can be liable if, one, they're intentionally liable, like they mean to be. If they mean to be liable, they will be. Second, the undisclosed principal problem. Okay, so what does this mean? This means if the third party doesn't know that you're actually the agent for someone, okay? If they don't know you're an agent, they actually think they're signing a contract with you. So therefore, you'll be liable. So you have to make it clear that you're the agent for a principal. The third way that the agent will be liable is a breach of warranty of authority. That's what we're going to focus on. So let's have a look. So an agent can be liable to the third party when they claim they're making the contract for the principal, but they don't have authority. Okay. Now, if the third party relies upon this statement, this representation, and wouldn't have entered the contract without it, they can sue the third party. Okay. So if you go outside your scope of authority, you could be liable. An important thing to remember as an agent. Finally, concluding agency. So when does the agency agreement stop? Well, it can stop when you've done the task, It can stop if you've specified the appointment period and that's over. It can stop where you agree to terminate it. It can stop where the principal dismisses the agent because they haven't been following the contract. And it can stop when the principal revokes or limits the authority. So there's several ways it can be terminated. Remember that you're best off, if you are establishing an agency relationship, to actually specify the appointment period, which would mean it would terminate when that appointment period is over. Note also, you can revoke or limit the authority of an agent as the principal, particularly where you find them doing the wrong thing. Okay, so with agency out of the way, those key elements of the relationship between a principal and someone acting on their behalf, we're going to now move into business structures.